You seem to still be up there somewhere.
Maybe I am. There are flying saucers.
Supposing they're Martians or something in there.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm itsasherz, and this is...
Tobias.
Tobias, how was your weekend?
How was my weekend? My weekend was... It was good. It was great. I had a great weekend. So, yeah, I don't know if people noticed, but this past Saturday, there was a series of protests across the nation. Now, I know I could sense everybody's buttholes clench up simultaneously. No, I'm not about to talk about politics or anything. But I am going to mention that one of the things that I did over my weekend was attend a local community gathering of individuals concerned with current goings on. And so I thought that was great because I live in a pretty small village, and you know, we had a fairly good turnout, and I was really pleased to see that. You know, I wasn't sure how many people would be there. I didn't organize it or anything. And, but yeah, no, it was good. It was nice to be able to meet some people in my own community that I didn't know. And cause I don't know very many people here, honestly, and talk about things. And I felt, I left feeling better than when I arrived, which I think is kind of the point of stuff like that. So that was good. And it's a place to start. So, so we did that on Saturday, and then on Sunday, I went to the gun range with Adam, and that was a lot of fun too. That would be Adam Benedict from the Pine Barrens Institute. We got to practice, you know, because if you're getting stared down by an angry dog man that's about to charge you, you're only going to get one shot at that, right?
Yeah.
So you can't miss.
No,
you got to practice, constant practice.
Yeah,
So.
You just never know. You know, that's a big part of it. Well, you know, I'm going to say that you've gotten really good about sharing your weekends.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I used to forget what I did every weekend.
and now you don't have to. Do you know why we talk about the weekend? Do you have any idea why that's a thing on this show?
No, none.
That's okay. It's, you know, for one, because we're human, right? We're people. And I think people like to recognize that we're also just, you know, regular jerk offs like they are. But it's also a little self-care because practicing gratitude is very important. And it sounds so silly and it sounds so ridiculous. But genuinely, if you're constantly reminding yourself of the good things that happen in your life, it's hard to be in a bad headspace. So that's why we do it. So whenever we talk about our weekends, I hope it triggers you guys to stop and recount your own weekends. And then you kind of get to remind yourself of the good things that you get to have. So anyway, so I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've been doing a lot of self-care, a lot of, you know, trying to understand emotions and things like that. I don't want to say pop psychology. I'm not a big fan of that. But a lot of, you know, deconstructing negative feelings because, my God, the world is so ugly. I had a weird epiphany over the weekends. And, you know, I kind of noticed that, like, the internet, and I guess we all know, like, how terrible it is, right?
Yeah.
But you could post a video online of, like, you making a cake. And there's always going to be assholes in the comments that have something negative to say about your cake. And it's just so baffling that we live in a world where people take something so innocent and they make it so terrible. So I've been really trying to distance myself away from that. So my social media presence has been a little, I'm trying to lessen it a lot. So I'm trying to take it all off my phone and just kind of use my phone as a phone in 2025. I know that's weird, but I just want to see how it goes. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to try.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, I'm one of the few people who probably really, really understands what you're saying because I've had some terrible experiences with people on the internet. And the more of a public figure you become, the more you open yourself up to some of just the worst behavior
Yeah.
that humanity can seem to summon, at least in terms of just generally being nasty to somebody. You know, I recognize, of course, there are lots of people who have it worse than me. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just saying that, like, holy shit, can people be vile, especially if they
Right.
don't think they're ever going to have to see you in person, or, you know, they can hide behind a keyboard. Even people that you might know, when it comes to the internet, like the shit people will say, it's just unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And, and that's what I was saying to my mom. I'm like, how many times do you see those negative comments on just very innocent things? And she's like, all the time. And I'm like, right. Because these people live in your community. Like, you pass them every day. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, right? And who hasn't been an asshole on the internet? Because I have. We've all done it too. And I
Sure.
just hate that. I don't like that. I'm just sitting here minding my own fucking business, trying to watch a cake video. And then there's somebody, just throwing their fucking asshole right in front of my face. No consent. It's rude. So anyway, I've just been thinking about trying to separate from social media a lot lately. So I've been trying to focus on other activities, to kind of get my brain away from that and out of that. Because, I know that, like, you've mentioned that somebody who sits down to watch a movie, and they don't sit down and watch the movie. They sit down and watch the movie while they look at their phone. I do that too. And I don't want to do that anymore.
No, that's the worst. I think it really ruins the experience.
It does.
I find myself, I have this habit because, I'm into a lot of gaming. And so I have all these role-playing game books, and I will find myself, like, just kind of idly flipping through, like, some RPG book while I'm trying to watch a movie. And I don't know that it's better in terms of paying attention to the movie, but I do know it's better in terms of my mental health. And so I find myself doing that. So I don't
Instead
know
of the
if there's
phone.
a,
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if
Yeah.
there's a way to kind of, like, wean yourself off of using the phone.
Right.
That
Like, I'm
might
trying to
help.
watch a movie. Like, why do I have to also do something else? Like, is it the point to watch a movie is to watch? I don't know. I'm just saying. I just think it's, and I've been, like, looking into a lot of research about, like, what smartphones are doing to our brains and things like that. And it's really horrifying. And I think that,
Oh, it's bad.
if I want to live in a better society, then I need to be an example. And that's me telling you guys this as you listen to this podcast while you do something else, probably. You know? So it's not
Right.
good marketing for me. This is just genuinely from my heart and soul. I just want us to be better as a civilization, and I want to take part in that. So yeah, you guys might hear more stories of me kind of getting back into my roots and doing things that are a little bit more fulfilling. And maybe I'll watch a whole movie without distraction. We'll see. We'll see you never know.
If it's a good movie, I will absolutely just sit down and straight up watch it. Yeah, at this point, but I had to get there. Like, you really do have to wean yourself off of your phone. And like you mentioned, what they're doing to the human brain is so disturbing. Like, brain rot is real. It's a real goddamn thing. And if you're not worried about it, you need to be.
Yeah.
So, yikes.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's what I did this weekend. It was good. It was really good.
Awesome.
It felt really good. So, I'm excited about that. We're gonna go ahead and get right into the news. We got a lot of news to talk about.
Oh boy.
We got breaking news. It's not breaking by the time you guys hear this episode because we record this. We're not doing the time traveling thing. I'm just letting you know. But we have some things to cover. So I have two newses.
Okay.
That we will get into. I'm going to start out with the first. March 29th, some asshole YouTuber was arrested for attempting to make contact with the Sentinelese tribe in North Sentinel Island.
What a dipshit. All right.
So, I'm not going to name this person. If you really want to go find out who it is, that's fine. But I'm not going to give them the time of day of you searching out their YouTube channel to go check them out. Fuck them. But, you know, if you guys don't know about the Sentinelese tribe, they are what is considered an uncontacted tribe. They're an isolated tribe right around India, right off the coast of India there.
Yeah.
And it is super illegal for you to go there because they have absolutely no contact with anybody outside of the tribe, uncontacted tribe. It's not only a detriment to you because they will kill you, and they have,
Yep.
and they did. Famously in 2018, killed missionary John Allen, I think it's Cho or Chow. I don't know how to say his name. He is somebody important, I guess. You know, he went there and he was never seen again. But it's important because you will kill them just by being yourself. They're not exposed to the daily rough and tough life of the germs and viruses that we are constantly exposed to or that we carry all over our bodies. It will release the plague onto their people and will kill them. So this guy goes and this is his third attempt. He had 2 other attempts prior where he was unsuccessful because the area, the coast there is heavily guarded. They do try to keep track of people and make sure that you're not showing up, you know, to their home. But this time he was able to actually get on shore. A fisherman that was kind of passing through the area noticed him and was able to notify authorities. But he was there for about an hour. He came armed with coconuts and bottles of Diet Coke to give as an offering to the people. He stood on the shore for an hour, blowing a whistle, trying to get the tribe's attention. And then that didn't work. So I believe he attempted to leave before finally being apprehended. And they did try to find the items that he left, especially the Diet Coke, because that is going to give them diarrhea. But they were unsuccessful in doing so. So, you know, these tribes, they're difficult to talk about. I think they're so interesting. You know, I'm super into indigenous lore and things like that. And, you know, and then you have, you know, of course people want to talk about, cannibal tribes. And I'd love to talk about it one of these days, but it's, as a white person, it's hard to cover and not be insensitive. So I just thought maybe we'd spend a few minutes kind of talking about them in general, talking about this asshole in the news, since we have a topical story to talk about with the Sentinelese people. So
Sure. Well, I mean, they are fascinating as one of the only known tribes that really has no human contact outside of their own culture, right? And like you mentioned, that's as much by choice as anything, because they will fucking kill you. So don't go there for all kinds of reasons. If you need it to be a selfish reason, then self-preservation is about as good as it gets for that. So just for your own safety, just don't fucking go there. But yeah, no, it is fascinating. Of course, I'm like you. I would like to know more about them. But for me, like you already mentioned too, like because of the position that we're in as as Western citizens, really, like there is no universe in which we need to impose ourselves on these people. If they ever come forward and they want to join the rest of the world, which why the fuck would you want to do that? You know, like having seen the rest of the world and what we're up to, no fucking thank you. Like, can I join them? I doubt they'd have me, but it would be worth a shot, right? But yeah, like there's just no way that we need to impose ourselves on them. If they ever decide that they want to come forward, I would love to hear about their culture and beliefs and everything else. But until that happens, like for fuck's sake, dude, leave them alone. Especially if you're some dipshit YouTuber, like the most useless thing you can be in society. We don't need you representing us to the Sentinelese, right? Like just leave them alone. Just stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, just quit it. Yeah, they it's fascinating because they kind of have little snipers. I mean, the guy really is lucky to be alive. They have little snipers, posted up in different, parts of the islands. And there's a really famous photo of one of them, or I think it's a couple of them, and one of them is like aiming a bow and arrow at the helicopter that's taking the photo because they're known to shoot arrows at helicopters flying over the area. They
Yeah.
do not fucking want you there. They don't want you there. They don't want me there. They don't want any of us there. So let's give them that. But, one thing that I see people talk about all the time with these tribes, and I think I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to do a cannibal tribe episode very soon because people keep saying that they're cannibals. And that's not proven at all, and it's just goes to show like how we kind of view these people as some type of animal rather than a fellow human being because like cannibalistic tribes, like they don't practice cannibalism because of any type of I'm stupid and I'm just going to eat humans. It's always ritualistic, right? It's
Right.
it's usually spiritual in a way, and I think that would be really neat to talk about. But these people are not that. I mean, we have no reason to believe that they're cannibalistic at all. They're just a people
Right.
living on an island by themselves, and if you come there, they'll kill you because otherwise you'll kill them, and they know that.
Oh, for sure. I think
So,
those kinds of uh, like cultural taboos get applied too often. It's this form of like judgmental, like primitivism, right? Where like
yeah,
you're looking at these other people and you're othering them, and you are seeing them as less than yourself, and so you're just applying these things like cannibalism to them, even though you don't know that like about
right.
them, of course, because how the fuck could you? We don't know anything about them. But yeah, I'm sure that people in their utter stupidity are just sitting there going, oh, well, of course they're cannibals. Like they don't want to be around other people. They're dangerous. They're primitive. They must be cannibals. And well, you must be an asshole, knock it off.
Right, just knock that off. So, maybe taboos in general. We'll do a taboos episode. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
I think that'd be a lot of fun. Um, It'll be controversial. It'll be, it'll be
What
hot.
can we stand to be any more controversial?
Oh yeah, we
I think
can
we can.
we
Yeah,
can
we
do
gotta
way
amp that
better.
up.
Right, we
Crank it up
gotta.
to 11.
Right, we're doing rookie numbers right now. We need to do better. So anyway, so the YouTuber he was arrested, or he's been detained by Indian police. Of course, he's an American citizen.
Of course.
So there is some, legal gray area. They're trying to figure out what to do with him. As of today, as far as I know, he hasn't been formally charged with anything, but he probably will be. And who knows what that looks like. And in America, we're just kind of like, well, you fucking can't go there. So sorry, which is good. I'm glad we're doing that to him. We're not
Yeah.
trying to scoop him up.
Yeah, we don't need to get the embassy involved. Like this fucking
Oh,
dude did what he did. He can
right.
rot for it. Who cares?
Yep. So anyway, that was that one. Good news then. The next one, this just happened today. Okay, here we go. The next news story.
Okay.
The dire wolf is back. Sorta.
Yay, I saw that.
So, April 7th, a big press conference was held by a company called Colossal Biosciences. Now, if you are into cryptozoology whatsoever, you've 100% heard of these people. They've been promising to bring back extinct species for quite a while now. They're the people that's always talking about bringing back the woolly mammoth. They're always talking about bringing back the Tasmanian tiger. Well, they have held true to their word, and they have officially announced that they are in possession of 3 dire wolf pups. They're now about 6 months old. They were officially born on October 1st of 2024. And they're doing really well. So this has been quite the interesting story to follow because this is the first time that we have done something like this before. You guys, the dire wolf hasn't been around for 13,000 years. Like,
I'm sure it's fine.
That's wild. Well, they're never going to release it out into the wild ever. That's never going to happen, supposedly, right? But we've all seen Jurassic Park. We know how that goes.
Yeah. It'll
Um,
escape. It's fine.
It has to, it's written by the prophet Jeff Goldblum, right? That it will find a way. So
Sure.
we all know. Colossal is a Texas-based company. They've been working on doing stuff like this for a while, but are they really dire wolves? So there's been a lot of controversy because people are kind of pissed off, not because they're bringing back extinct species to hold in cages or whatever, but because these aren't really dire wolves. So if you look at the all of the science that goes into it, I'm not even going to pretend to understand it. I don't, right? I don't work in biology. But I can understand it to a degree. What they are doing is they have the genome of DNA from old fossils. So, for example, they use 2 different fossils of a dire wolf. They use a tooth and they used a skull, both with varying degrees of age to them, to take what they had, the DNA that they had, and then reconstruct that DNA onto another creature. And what they have been using to reconstruct that DNA on are gray wolves. So what these really are genetically modified gray wolves. Tobias, I don't know how much you got a chance to read about any of this. I know it just happened today.
Yeah, not much. So that kind of sounds like in Jurassic Park, where they modified or they had to patch the dinosaur DNA, and they used like frog DNA.
Yeah.
So they weren't really dinosaurs, and that's how the velociraptors, even though they only had females, could like breed anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel like we are heading rapidly towards a real life Jurassic Park sort of situation, which I have to say I love for us. I think this is going to be great.
I also kind of love it. I mean, people are mad because they're saying that they're not real dire wolves, and it's like, but like, does it really matter? You know what I mean? Like, because here's the thing: where does our code of ethics land on that? And I'm gonna say something controversial, I guess, to some people, but trans people. Right? People say it all the time. Well, your DNA can't change. Let me tell you, motherfucker, something. Trans women are still women, and trans men are still men.
True. Yes.
So
that is 100% true. Full stop.
Right. So what does it matter? Like if they manipulated DNA from current species in order to replicate this new species. The whole point of what this company is doing, while this kind of seemed like more of a passion project for them to de-extinct a species, it's going to lead to better sciences where we can then take it and use it to manipulate endangered species currently, so we don't fuck up our planet any further, or at least try to fix it a little bit. And we need that science. Like, this is important still.
Absolutely. Like I don't know how people thought you would otherwise be able to reintroduce an extinct species other than by essentially having to modify the DNA of a living relative to match like the extinct species DNA. I like, how else are you going to do that? Right? Like what method were these people expecting, I guess, is what I'm asking. I don't get that argument at all. It's not a real dire wolf. Like, what? Okay, great, good. I hope you feel fucking awesome about yourself. Now shut up and let us enjoy our dire wolf.
Well, because they're like, well, they're just using it as like a buzzword for marketing so they can get more investors. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, they are. I agree with you there. Technically, yes, that is what they're doing. But I don't care, because again, the science itself is so important to existing species. And then of course you get the people that are like, oh, well, since they'll never be released out in the wild, well, that's just inhumane. And it's like, those fucking dire wolves, the whole internet is going to love these fucking dire wolves for the rest of their life. Like instant celebrities. You know what I mean? Like they are going to be well cared for. Like it's fine.
Sure. I mean, they could be in a preserve or something. It's
Well, they're
it'll
on
be fine.
2,000 acres, I think, or something crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, they're on which, they're saying typically wolves, a whole pack is like 1 per thousand. I think it's 1,000. I don't know if it was acres or square feet or what measurement they use, but like they already have double the space of a regular wolf would naturally cover in their natural life. So it's okay. Like it's all right, you guys.
Right.
It's okay to be excited about this.
No one can ever enjoy anything ever again.
No.
The internet has decreed it.
But this will be interesting because they're definitely already planning to do more of this, and they're just going to continue to do so. I mean, they're going to be able to continue to do so because after people have seen the results, everybody we know one stock that's not crashing right now, right? Everybody's going to be investing in it, and they're talking about, of course, the woolly mammoth. That's something that scientists in general have talked about doing for a long time. But the Tasmanian tiger, the dodo bird, man, that would be so fucking cool.
But T-Rex when? That's all I want to know.
That's I eventually, I think in our lifetime, and that's nuts. I never thought I'd say something like that, but Tobias, in our lifetime, we might fucking have T-Rex. That's crazy.
Good. And I wanted to escape, and I wanted to wreck a whole city.
When they do the T-Rex, we'll go and we'll break it out. We'll make sure it happens.
All right.
We'll get Jurassic Park 2, out here, Lost World.
I need to find a place that can make a saddle that'll fit a T-Rex, and we'll be all set.
We're gonna get there, and Adam's gonna be there, and he's already did it.
God damn it! Probably.
Like, that's what's gonna happen. Anyway, so that's my news. That's big news. That's a big deal.
That is some quality news. All I have for news today is a report from the void. That's right. A paranormal report that was sent to me that I was never able to follow up on because the person did not respond to any of my follow-up inquiries, which happens more often than you think. So let's see here. This came from an email with retelling an encounter with unidentified cryptid in the subject line all the way back in May 5th of last year. So I usually hold on to these for a long time. And the reason is, I don't know if I've ever actually explained this. The reason is because I want to give the witness like ample time to respond to me. And I might follow up a couple of different times just to make sure that this person is not going to get back to me, because the last thing that I want is for somebody to hear it on here and then go, oh, okay, well, I guess there's no point in getting back to him. He already wrote a thing and then mentioned it on a podcast. So this is literally just to get all the information that I receive out there to people after I am confident that I'm not going to be able to pursue this any further than I already have. So I'll read the email. It's not very long. So this person wrote, I'm going to skip the intro. Like, they introduced themselves. I redacted their name because privacy is important. And I'll just get right into it. This was when I was a junior in high school. It was a Tuesday night, and my mom asked me to take out the garbage and pull the dumpster out to the alley. I was pulling the dumpster out to the alley when I froze and could feel my blood turning cold and the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. I looked where this sensation was coming from, and I saw a 9-foot tallish figure that looked hunched about 20 feet from me. I couldn't tell any features, just a black mass, but it was so black that I could see it at night. The only thing that stuck out to me was its glowing red eyes. It felt like an eternity, and I didn't dare to move because I felt like I was caught in this thing's eyes. Eventually, it moved on. When it left, I bolted inside, white like a ghost, and my mom happened to be inside, and she asked me what was wrong. I told her what I saw. Ironically, she didn't believe me and said it was just my imagination running wild. I know what I saw was real. The only thing that this thing reminded me of was Mothman. Now, I'm not saying it's that legendary creature, but when I first found out about Mothman, I pointed right at it and said, that's what I saw. Yet, I couldn't find anything on any sightings from that year and came up with nothing. For years, when I retold this to people, it's always the same. I'm either making this up, or it's my imagination, or I was astrally projecting my darker emotions, which is the most outlandish claim, or I saw a demon. I don't know what I saw that night, honestly. And so, what's interesting to me about this, there's a lot of things that are interesting to me about this, obviously, but this isn't the first shadowy creature or shadow person or related phenomena that has been brought to my attention as a result of investigating the Mothman, right? So let's see, starting back in 2019, I was contacted by a man who said he and a friend had once seen a shadowy man transform into a big, black, shadowy, cat-like creature after suddenly appearing out of a flash of bright light. That was in Richmond, Indiana. Now, Richmond is about 35 miles southeast of Prairie Creek Reservoir, the site of a series of reports involving flying humanoids and glowing orbs. So, like, that area is a part of the Lake Michigan Mothman or Midwestern Mothman sighting investigation. So, also in 2019, I spoke to Illinois resident Paula, who said she had encountered a hulking winged creature in Wakanda, Illinois, while taking out the trash 3 years after she had seen a strange beam of light in the exact same spot. And in 2020, a witness reached out to me to tell me about how she was walking her roommate's dog just before midnight on January 9th of that year when she noticed a tall, thin, humanoid solid shadow figure shuffling towards her in the Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago. So, of course, that sighting was in the vicinity of dozens of other Mothman sightings that had been reported in the greater Chicagoland area since 2017. So I really wish I would have been able to talk to this person because it very much seems to be following this trend. Now, I don't know what this trend means, but, you know, 2 is a coincidence. 3 is a pattern, and we're going on 4. So what is that? You know, I call that interesting. What do you think?
Well, that's my Mothman experience. I get that all the time.
That's
How do you
right.
know it wasn't a shadow person? How do you know? I don't know how to tell you that I know. I just know. And I mean, exactly that. I mean, it's crazy because that in my brain, that exact phrase, that's what I saw. I mean, it's what
I know
it's
what I
what I
saw.
saw. I seen it. I was like, oh my God, I saw it too. That makes sense now, but no, it very much follows in line with that. It's not particularly unusual. Linda Scarberry, and I believe it was her mother-in-law. If you guys don't know, Linda Scarberry, the famous Scarberry mallet sighting in 66 in Point Pleasant. They saw it inside of their home as like a shadow person later in life. So it's one of those idiosyncrasies that does show up that for some reason people like to ignore. I don't know why. Because
Sure.
it doesn't
You know,
fit what they want to do.
oh yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It's paradigm shifting at the very least, if not outright paradigm shattering. So I think that there is a tendency for people to ignore stuff like that. I just wanted to say, when you mentioned that, I was reminded of another case that I had investigated from a mother and daughter in Madison, Wisconsin, who had an encounter. And then later the mother saw this red-eyed, like black, shadowy winged creature in the basement of their apartment building. So
Mhm.
that's another one that builds on this pattern here. So yeah, I don't know what to make of it, but it's pretty fucking fascinating.
Well, and that's the only, like, I've told you guys all know, if you listen to the show, I'm not a ghost person, right? I'm not a ghost hunter. But I still investigate paranormal phenomena, ghost phenomena, because some of the stories I will get, um, they'll explain a shadowy winged type of creature that they attribute to a demon, right? They're just not calling it the Mothman. But they're still describing all the same characteristics. Now I can't say that they're the exact same because me and my Mothman didn't sit down and have a chit chat about it, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's there, right? The pattern's definitely there, and I think that not paying attention to it is just not being honest with yourself.
Agreed. There's some intellectual dishonesty at work there when people
Yeah.
ignore it.
You just gotta, and who knows? Maybe it is a demon. I don't fucking know. Again,
Maybe.
me and him haven't talked about it yet. So one of these days, we'll get together and I'll just ask him, "Are you a demon?" We'll see what he says.
Rude. You,
That's going to be his
Asher's, you
response.
can't just ask somebody if they're a demon. God.
Wouldn't be the first time. Won't be the last.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, it's a lot more common than people definitely realize. I think it would be cool to do like I'm not gonna say it because then someone's gonna steal my idea. Fuck you, I'm gonna keep my ideas to myself. I'll tell you guys what's cool when I do it. How about that?
Just text it to me later so that I can steal it.
I will. Yeah, that's a good idea. But anyway, very fascinating. That's a good one. Some good,
excellent newsing all around.
Some good news. So speaking of weird things that happen to people, Tobias, you ever just you ever get off work one night, you and your boss, you just had a hard, long day, and you guys just want to go fishing, and in the middle of your fishing trip, just all of a sudden you get abducted by aliens. That ever happen to you?
Yeah, that's either the beginning to a porno or an alien abduction. One of the two is about to happen in that situation.
Why not both?
No, I can't say that has ever happened to me.
Why not both? Yeah, it's one day for you, maybe, I hope. But
Fingers crossed.
Super common, happens all the time. And by all the time, I mean this one time in a little town called Pascagoula, Mississippi. So we've covered this topic before in the show a long time ago, but not we like Tobias and I. And I think, we've kind of been revisiting old topics a little bit. Actually, a listener had messaged me and suggested that we talk about Sam, Sam the Sandown Clown. And that's one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done. So I was like, oh, well, we've done that one. But, we will do that together because why not?
Sure. Yeah.
But this is certainly one of those ones that warrants revisiting. We've given you guys a lot of stories lately that, we don't necessarily buy, or they're just known hoaxes, or, they're just fun stories, right? But we wanted to really get real with you for a second and talk about something that, I think we both feel strongly about as being genuinely anomalous. And Pascagoula, it checks all the fucking boxes, doesn't it?
I love this case. I do. I have since I was a kid. It's so weird and so credible in so many ways. And as time has gone on, there has been further corroboration of this story, and we'll get into it. But people have since come forward to say that they also saw something that night. And so the original witnesses, when they were talking to authorities and everything, like they were seen to be credible. And then we just keep adding on to the credibility of this account as time goes on, which I got to say, I love that. That is so rare in this field where a story gets more credible over time. Like that's fucking unheard of, right?
Yeah. So, and no, it definitely is. And, and this, like I said, this is one of those ones, man, it checks all the boxes. So, if you guys are ready for a genuine story or even just a classic story, without further ado, let's get into the Pascagoula abduction. So it was October 11th, 1973. Two men, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. Again, they're coworkers. So
There's a big age gap there, though.
Don't mind the age gap. Yeah, Charles is 42. Calvin is 19. Now, we'll kind of get into, I guess, some things people say about that. Nothing sexy, I promise. It's just very, very much a coworker relationship. But Charles is Calvin's boss, so it's not really that weird, right? They get off work. They decide, hey, let's go do some fishing. Let's go down to the Pascagoula River. There's a great pier over there, perfect for fishing. I think they built it for fishing. And they go down and they start doing their thing, and they're having a good time. And all of a sudden, they hear some very interesting noises. Now, Tobias, let me tell you, you did such a good job imitating the Mothman that one time on that one show. I thought that you could imitate the noises they may have heard coming from this craft.
Oh, God. I've seen it, like, written out. It was something like, okay, I've heard it described as a zipping noise. So I'm going to say that it was something like, zoo, zoo, zoo.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like those cars, when you were a kid that you would like pull back or whatever and then like let it, you'd pull it back to kind of charge it and let it go and it take off, but it makes that noise when you do it.
Right. I love
So
those stupid cars.
Do the shit out of it until the nearest adult yells at you to fucking stop.
It's true.
It sounds like that. That was pretty good. And while the noise is slowly approaching them, all of a sudden they notice a bright blue light in the sky, and it's just kind of getting closer and closer to them. And the bright blue light ends up being very classic oval-shaped craft, okay? Some type of oval-shaped craft, maybe 30 to 40 feet across, maybe 8 to 10 feet high, right? Just and that's really all the detail we get on that. But things really ramp up when three leathery, gray-skinned creatures with weird spikes on their heads and lipless mouths and crab-like pincers descend from the craft.
I love this. So, like, okay, picture this. You've got this 5-foot tall alien, totally naked, with rough, pale, elephant-like skin, right?
Yeah.
Their features, also the weirdest fucking thing you've ever seen in your life. No discernible eyes, thin slit for a mouth, and 3 cones jutting where like a human's nose and ears would be. So like picture a snowman with like a carrot nose. If the snowman had no eyes and that carrot nose was also its ears. Like that's how fucking weird these things are. Like you just don't get reports like this anymore. I just love it so much.
God, I was so nostalgic doing research, re-researching for this episode. I'm just like, alien abductions, they're really not what they used to be,
No. They just don't make them like this anymore. Yeah, they've got the weird mitten-shaped, like, crab hands. And then their legs don't move. Like, they move through the air in this sort of gliding motion. And they stand upright in this like, pillar position, and they hold their legs together the entire time. Like they have legs, but they don't use them. So, which honestly, I have legs. I would prefer not to use them that much. So I get it. If I could just fly around, I absolutely would all the time.
But don't you think that you're like, wouldn't they be like not like they're like shut? They're like closed shut. Like why aren't they relaxed? You know what I mean? Like
that's a good point.
Minimum. I mean, they're uptight. They're maybe they just wanted to fish too, and this is why they showed up to begin with, because they were just having a bad day, right? Hard day on the ship. Right. They're just trying to, do a little R&R. I'm just saying. So
I know these guys are in their spot. They're like, well, fuck. Now what are we gonna do?
All right, we got to move these guys.
Just abduct these fucking dudes.
They did, and so what happens is, both Calvin and Charles are, stricken with fear, obviously. Like, they're not having a good time anymore. This is horrifying to them, and it would be to anybody. As much as we joke about it, disgusting, right? That's terrible. and they were just kind of paralyzed in fear. But the consensus is kind of out on that. Potentially they were paralyzed with fear. Potentially these beings were doing something to them, and we've heard that 1,000,001 times in these kinds of stories. Some type of manipulation to kind of put them in a daze to make them more compliant with what's about to happen, you know.
Sure.
And who knows? It doesn't matter. But again, you're going to find varied stories on that, and that's fine. So they approach Calvin and Charles, and they, grab them with their gross pincher hands, and they levitate them up onto the craft. At this point, what Calvin had said immediately, we'll go based off of the original story, is that he passes out. He loses consciousness.
Right.
And they go up into the ship, and
Ooh, while they do, this is my favorite part. So, they're all my favorite part. I'm going to have about 20 to 25 favorite parts to this story, just so you know. But these beings come floating up on them, and they raise their arms, and in response, like, both men feel their own arms raise involuntarily, right? And then the lead alien makes this murmuring sound, like a grunt or a mumble, and then like its companions don't say anything at all. Like, they make no visible or audible response to this. And at that point, the men are led aboard the craft, which I just have to assume like that alien is in charge, and nobody likes that guy. Like, how many people like their boss, right? So he's like floating up on these two dudes just trying to fish, and an alien or whatever. He's just like, all right, guys, back me up, make me look cool. And the other guys are just like, I'm not even going to say anything. Like, you suck. Just get them on the ship. Jesus.
Fucking showboating out here. That's so funny. At first, I thought you were going to compare the noises to like the South Park aliens. Like,
I mean, maybe.
They have that stupid.
Right?
That's what it makes me think of, and I have no idea why. Maybe that's where they got it.
I can see that. Maybe.
But that's a good point. So they get on the ship, and now Charles Hickson, he describes an interesting situation where he's being examined. Now he keeps referring to these three beings as like robots, and kind of later down the line, there's some stuff that comes out later down the line. So we'll get into those details. But he says that they're robots. Like, he's convinced that that's what they are, despite them having that weird elephant skin. Because it's gray, it's wrinkly, it's gross. Not that elephants are gross. I love them, but
mean. Poor
I know, right? I'm over here elephant shaming. Jeez, terrible. But he definitely describes them as robots, and I don't know if that's just because he, like, that's with the pincher hands, like that's what he associates them with. I'm not sure. But he
could have been because of how they were moving and like how stiff they were, and like their legs. Like they're described as standing column-like, with their legs stiff and held together. I don't know. That's what I picture.
Which isn't the first time we get a column-like legged alien from outer space. Like, I don't know, the Flatwoods Monster. We'll talk about that on a different day, though. True. But just saying. And also pincher hands. Well, no, it had claws. I lied.
Yeah.
But still, close enough. Claws are closer to pincher hands than hands. Anyway.
Sure. Okay.
So they go up to the ship, and they lay him on a table, and he's examined by these things, and also a giant robot eyeball thing.
I love that thing.
That's like, it's examining him, it's going around his body, and he says it was very thorough, but doesn't really mention anything particularly physically invasive, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think, as far as I know, in terms of like probing, especially specifically the anal probe, I think that kind of probing started with Strieber
It
in
did.
terms of accounts. I don't know that that he was the first person to be probed in that way. Certainly, there had been sexual encounters before then, because Antonio Villas-Boas was all the way back in the 50s.
Yeah.
But like that straight up, like, I'm going to violate you and probe you. You know, I don't remember hearing a ton about that before the 80s.
Well, and I say, oh yeah, it started with Strieber. Like I know, right? Like I know who the aliens probed. But
Right.
yes, that is like, it's a trope that's been created because it's so fucking bizarre, but it is mostly created based off of that one person. It doesn't seem to be typical.
Right.
But the reason why I mentioned no physically invasive procedures done is because Calvin Parker would later claim that he had an invasive procedure done to him.
Oh.
Yeah, so and we'll get into that. But this is just, again, we're back in 73, this is when this all happened. So it didn't last very long. Before they knew it, they're back on shore and have been dropped off, and they're like looking at each other and they're like, what the fudge? Do you like that censoring that I did there of myself?
Yeah, that was so weird and out of place. That was worse than swearing. So much worse.
No, right? So cringe. And I can hear all of our listeners like, "Ooh, this is so grossed out."
Right?
They just turned off the show.
What the
They're like, oh,
What the fuck? That people just slamming their iPhones on the ground.
I was trying to think of a cooler word than fudge, but anyway, I guess fuck, right? That's the cooler word than fudge.
There's no cooler word in the human language than fuck. We all know it.
So
that's why we use it so much.
It makes me look cool. And I totally care about what other people think about how I look.
It's true. We all do.
So that's why I smoke, God. Anyway. So they're just like, they're baffled, right? Obviously, they're very shaken up. They rush off. I don't even think they packed their shit up. Probably. Oh, they probably did. Fishing equipment's expensive, and
yeah, it's not cheap.
They get their shit in the car. Charles, Hickson, he takes a few swigs. He's got some alcohol in the car, right? Takes some swigs of it because he's like freaking out. And they're like, "What do we do? What do we do?" Well, they do the right thing, and they go straight to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office.
Did they go straight to the sheriff's office? Because I've heard also that they tried to go to the press first, but the newspaper office was closed, so then they went to the sheriff's office.
I have heard that also. I'm not sure what to believe. I heard not that they tried to go to the press first, but that they tried to go to the Air Force Base.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I wouldn't imagine that the Air Force Base would be closed. So I don't know. I can't say. I wasn't there. But potentially they could have tried to go to the press first. But again, folks, there's no Ghostbusters with stuff like this.
Sure.
Who the fuck do you go to report this kind of thing to? Do you go to the media and then hope that by getting your story out there, somebody contacts you? A lot of people do go to the media before the police. That's not unusual. Or do you go to the police where they're just going to laugh you out of the office anyway? Because that's almost what happened here. Let's be honest. They go to the sheriff's office. They start explaining, what happened. And the police are like, "Have you been drinking? You smell a little like alcohol." I don't know if they said that, but probably. That's what they thought. They thought that these were just two drunk guys, right? Had a little bit too much to drink while they were fishing. Thought that, they were abducted by aliens. Of course that didn't happen. Of course that's not real, So what they decide to do... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, there was one... I've got this quote because I wrote this up for the website, of course, because this is one of my favorite cases. So of course I did. And there is a quote from Chief Deputy Barney Mathis of the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, who is supportive of these guys. Now, I can't say if he was immediately that night, but ultimately, when this story came out, because this story did end up getting a decent amount of press. When this chief deputy talked about it, he said that something happened to them. Like his literal quote is, "Something happened out there. Something frightened them very much. They were very emotional. This is the most unusual thing I've ever been in." So there's some support for the authorities taking them seriously, at least eventually.
So. And that's not particularly unusual either. With the injured cold case, the police, he comes home, he tells his wife what happens, and he just met an alien, Woody Derenberger, and his wife calls the police for him because he's so upset, and they verify right then and there, we've had calls of people seeing strange things in the sky tonight. And they come out and they're interested to hear what he's got to say because of those calls they were getting about it. Again, this isn't like it is particularly unusual for the police to believe you when it comes to this stuff. So it's not necessarily, I mean, they're just people too with their own experiences. Sure. We have some police officers that have these experiences. We've talked about them on the show. So anyway, but it's a lot to bite off and chew for any one person. So you're going to think the worst immediately. And he wasn't the only police officer there that night. There was a couple of them. And there's good reason to have been supportive of the story, because what the police decide to do, instead of just sending them off on their way or booking them for the night or, whatever, they sat them down in an interrogation room where there are recording devices to record interrogations, right? So they are sitting with them. I think we probably all know that now, right? I think we're all aware that if you step foot into a police station at all, probably you're being recorded. I don't know how common knowledge that was in 73.
I have no idea.
Probably not very. I mean, we hardly have forensic science at this point. So probably, and we've talked about, that before too, just how that all works. But they sit down with them in the room and they're kind of getting the story and what's going on. Calvin says, I don't know what happened. I can only tell you what happened before I passed out. Hickson goes, yeah, this is what happened. And then they go, okay, great. Well, we're going to, take a little break and we'll be right back. And the police get up and they leave the room. And this is where the story gets super popular. This is what it's most well known for, is that while the police are outside of the room, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker continue to have a very normal conversation about what just happened to them. And they're not sitting there looking at each other going, do you think they bought it? They're sitting there talking about basically how traumatized they are about what they just experienced. This is something that you guys can go and openly listen to. It's available online, wherever you get podcasts, or whatever. But it is very telling, because if it didn't actually happen, don't you think that they would have been at least silent, at minimum?
Right. Yeah, no, the recording, it definitely sounds like two people who are trying to make sense of something utterly bizarre that has just happened to them. And so when they're talking about it, you get the sense that they're not like trying to get their stories like straight, because this is a hoax and they want to make sure that the police bought it. No, they're talking about it like two guys who are just like, did that just happen? Like, did this really just happen to us? Like, what do you remember? This is what I remember. It's pretty convincing, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and what's extra interesting about it is that Calvin Parker seems to be a little, at the time we just think he's a young guy, but it's a lot of Charles Hickson comforting Calvin Parker and, So it seems like he's a little bit more traumatized by it,
Yeah.
or like I said, it could be just, again, because he's only 19, he's just a kid, really.
Sure.
Maybe Hickson is trying to take on, that authoritative figure and just be a little bit more comforting to him. But I don't know, because again, what we kind of find out a little bit later about Calvin and what he claims may have happened to him that night, it'll make a little more sense. So they end up getting the police reported, and like you said, then this becomes a huge story. I mean, it does. It really becomes a big old Pascagoula fever is in the air.
Pascagoula alien abduction fever. Catch it.
And it was kind of, I mean, some stuff. So there was a story. Oh, I shouldn't even bring it up. I'm not going to bring it up.
You literally just did.
Man, I just did. I know. I wasn't going to, because I couldn't. I can't remember the fucking name of the incident. I can't find it. There's pictures of an alleged robot-looking creature that looks really ridiculous, and honestly, it just looks like somebody wearing a fucking tinfoil Halloween costume. But what's interesting,
shit, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, right? But I can't think of the fucking name. But it happens within close vicinity of the Pascagoula event, but not just within close vicinity. Like right when this happens, but not like it happens after their story got out to the news. Like it happened in tandem. So whether or not somebody fakes some Polaroids, I wish I could remember the name of the goddamn pictures, and I can't. The Falkville?
The Falkville tinfoil alien encounter.
Thank you.
October 17th, 1973.
Okay, so it was a little bit after their situation. But that was a police officer that supposedly encountered this creature, got a call to go out to the farm because of some strange things happening. He goes out there, he sees this creature, takes pictures of it, puts it out there. And I don't know, it happened in Falkville, Tennessee, you said?
I didn't say because I just found it. Falkville, Alabama, I believe.
Alabama.
Yep, Falkville, Alabama.
So let's see how far away that is in real time from Pascagoula, Mississippi, because I feel like it was not far. Yeah, 356 miles.
I mean, that's not that far as like the UFO flies, right?
Right. I mean, so who knows? Are they related? I don't know. But it's kind of one of those things that really gets overshadowed a lot. For one, because the pictures look goofy.
They do.
But two, because this was happening and people were into this at that time, also. I don't know. Go look at those pictures if you want to, guys. Again, it looks goofy, but who knows? Maybe aliens just look fucking goofy. I don't know them.
Maybe. I mean, humans look fucking goofy.
I'm not saying cops can't make shit up. We know about that, don't we, Tobias? We talked about that last week. Anyway. But it is from a police officer, and that's supposed to be a credible source, so who knows?
Sure.
Anyway, I digress. Let's get back to Pascagoula. So they start kind of getting their media attention. Everybody's kind of coming out and talking about them and what they're doing. Well, not really. Calvin Parker, he's not really interested in talking about this a lot. He goes pretty quiet following this event for a very long time. However, Charles Hickson kind of goes on to become, like a ufologist, right? I mean, he's really into this shit.
He does the circuit, yeah, for sure.
And he starts, I guess you're right. That's probably a better way to say it. I guess I wouldn't call him a ufologist.
He speaks at events and stuff. He does TV, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so, but he gets into the shit. He writes a book, but he goes on to claim to have further contact with aliens after the Pascagoula thing. I mean, I know of like the one story that he has with, he comes home and there's like a female gray at his house.
We've all been there.
I wish I'd been there. I don't, not me yet, unfortunately. Maybe on my birthday this year, we'll see. But
right? Yeah, like that sleazy music starts playing as soon as you walk in. You're like, shit, there's gonna be an alien gray lady here. I just know it. This is going to be one of those abduction pornos.
From one of my back rooms, out comes fucking Mantis Cock, and he's like, "Look what I got you for your
Yep.
birthday." And I'm like, "Oh fuck." He's like, "It's my birthday too."
Bow. Yep. That's how it goes every time.
Damn it.
Mantis Cock's all, "Happy birthday to me," rubbing his greasy hands together.
And what am I supposed to do? Turn that down? No, I'm not stupid.
No, you can't. Nobody can.
Jeez.
Nobody has that kind of self-control.
So it'll be an interesting weekend. My birthday's June. It'll be an interesting weekend, probably the first week of July, guys. Weekend banter. I'll tell you all about it.
Excellent.
But he goes on to say other interesting things. He gets pretty heavy into the message, right? The message of the aliens, and kind of expands the story a little bit about this examination that he has, where they didn't just examine him physically, but they also examined him mentally.
Yep.
Which is kind of a weird thing. But, during this mental examination, he claims they were inputting information about just the same shit. What do you guys hear all the time from fucking abductees? Do better, Earth. I mean, fuck, I don't know.
Right. And by mental, we mean telepathic. It's not like there wasn't like an alien psychologist or something there. This is like mind to mind telepathic communication.
Right. Yes, just kind of, but not so much. I don't think really speech. He might have reported speech. I don't remember. But more of
like it can be like images and things. Yeah.
Yeah, like a thought. So, telepathy 2.0. I don't know. I think there should be a better word for that.
I think it's all just telepathy. Like it doesn't have to be speech.
But there's different types of telepathy. Just like
don't gatekeep telepathy.
Look, I'm just saying, right? We all speak a language, but we all speak different languages, right? We speak English. The Germans speak German. I mean, we should respect that.
Sure. What telepathic language do you speak? So I can make a note of it.
You gotta know, right? You gotta ask. Don't be rude.
That's true. You're right. I am the one being culturally insensitive to the fucking carrot nose aliens.
To the carrot nose aliens, so rude. To the Caridians is what I'm gonna call them here and now. So Charles Hickson, eventually he dies.
We all do.
We all do.
Sure.
He gets old. He was 42 when this happened. He was already halfway there.
Yeah, he passed away in early 2000s, I think, at the age of like 80. Or was it 2011? I don't remember. Oh, I should know this. Now I feel bad.
You should. You should know this. I don't know. This is the point in my research where my teenage daughter was having a crisis, so I had to deal with that. This is supposed to be why there's two of us, Tobias. I'm just kidding. It's totally fine.
I know. I've seen this so many times. Like I know he passed away at the age of 80 of a heart attack. So
wow. So pretty natural.
It was 2011. Okay, I was right. The second time, 2011.
So after Hickson dies, Calvin Parker kind of starts picking up the torch and running with it a little bit. And, he goes on. Now, I don't know if he had started doing it right before. He may have, especially with Charles Hickson being in his old age. Calvin Parker also getting up there, at that point. He might have tried to back him up some a little bit and try to, I don't know, for whatever reason, like Bob Gimlin, he decided to just throw himself into it. And, who knows? Maybe he thought he could make money off of it. Maybe
you get to a certain age and you just don't give a fuck anymore.
Maybe it's
that. You're like, this is my lived experience. I lived my whole life not wanting to be associated with it and just trying to have a normal life. And now I'm 60. I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah. And Calvin comes out and he eventually writes his own book. He starts doing the circuit. Okay. He starts going around telling his story, and his story has changed a little bit. Calvin ends up saying that while, yes, he did initially pass out pretty much at the sight of the beings appearing, that he would kind of come in and out of consciousness a little bit. And at one point in time, he remembers being on an exam table, and the person that's examining him is not one of the Caridians, or the big giant eyeball. It's more akin to a female gray. It's a female alien with these giant almond eyes, and she is, calming him. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you, which is definitely something that serial killers say to their victims before they kill them. So don't ever trust people when they say that, y'all.
True.
And, he is kind of paralyzed. He can't really do anything, but he's also he's kind of in and out of consciousness. And she is trying to keep him calm. And while this is happening, she kind of raises her hand up, and her middle fingers start like a spiky probe starts growing out of them. And she takes her spiky fingers and inserts them into his mouth. What do you guys think I was going to say?
Getting hot in here. All right.
I know
Here
his
we
mouth
go.
is kinky as fuck, I'm telling you. And she slips them not down his throat, but through his mouth up into his nasal cavity, his nasal passage.
That's very intimate. Yeah.
That is very intimate. I mean, you gotta tap on the uvula. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah. Bit. No, like you got to know somebody pretty well before you try something like that.
I've never met the right person yet. That's
no, it's hard.
Tobias, him and Emily, they're saving that for their 25th wedding anniversary.
Yeah, no, that's what you do for the 25th. That's the uvula shot. That's the traditional 25th anniversary thing.
So, and she inserts these spiky probes into somewhere in his nasal cavity, his nasal passages there, and takes something out, but also believes he may have been injected with something at that time. But while she's doing this, he is also having telepathy, but not telepathy. He's receiving images of multiple faces of people, humans, in the very same position that he's in. So he is seeing this happen to hundreds and hundreds of humans. And at that time, he's kind of realizing that, like, this is very routine. Like, this is something that they just come and do for whatever reason. He doesn't know why, but he has now been made aware that this has happened to hundreds of people. He's not the only one. And in the middle of this, the gray alien woman starts to try to, all of a sudden her face pops up, not physically in his vision, but in his mind. And she's trying to calm him. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. Well, Calvin said that this hurt pretty fucking bad. Like, it was very painful. And he couldn't scream or do anything about it. So I told you, they lie. They're not being honest.
It's true.
But that's what he remembers. And that's it. After that point, he lost consciousness completely again. Then he remembers being back on the shore, and that's it. So, people take issue with this story because it did come out so much later after Calvin Parker was doing the circuit, and I get it. And who knows? Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I wasn't there. But if we go back again to listen to that tape from them being in the police station, it does genuinely seem like Calvin's more. I mean, they're both upset, but it seems like he's having a harder time accepting this than Charles Hickson.
Right. I have no difficulty believing that was a detail that Parker kept to himself and only decided to share much, much later. Okay, let me back up. I should say I have no difficulty believing that as a possibility. I don't know that happened. But to somebody who would be willing to write off this entire experience because of that discrepancy, I would just remind you that these are human beings. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that it's that far-fetched that if Parker had undergone such a traumatizing experience that he might not be particularly forthcoming with all of the details. Oftentimes, if somebody has experienced significant trauma, it can take years of therapy before they're willing to talk about it. So the idea that he would just immediately open up and if he didn't share it right away, then it didn't happen, is contrary to kind of everything I think that we know about people who experience stuff like this. It's also worth noting that after this happened, there was significant interest, obviously, because this made national news, but also noted ufologists Dr. James Harder and Dr. J. Allen Hynek became very interested, and they both, after personally investigating and interviewing both men, left convinced that something had happened to them. That some kind of impactful, powerful experience had happened to these men. So, it doesn't prove anything, but it is worth noting. If you're going to have respect for anybody in this field, it ought to be Dr. J. Allen Hynek. I'll just say that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And he's one we talked about doing shows on different like researchers and stuff. He's one we definitely got to cover one of these days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I think people downplay his importance in ufology, and I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, and that is, it's super important. I mean, to recognize that. And trauma is very much like that. All trauma. It starts way smaller than what it actually is. And the story sometimes never gets fully told at all. But over time tends to come out. And, it just depends. Who knows? You know what? Even if Calvin Parker exaggerated those details, even if he did, I don't think it fucking matters, because the fucking robot lobster elephant guys are weird enough. You know what I mean?
It's true.
And
it wouldn't. Yeah, like it wouldn't help the credibility. Now there is another phenomenon that we don't talk about as often, but that is when a witness will embellish details or just add details to make their experience seem more sensational, to try, or even hoax evidence to try to convince people. Now, the core experience might be real, but then they try to add additional details, or like I said, even hoax evidence as a way to get people on board with their experience, because they're worried that nobody's going to believe them otherwise.
Right.
And that gets into some really, really murky water, right? Like that is some difficult business, because at that point it becomes almost impossible to separate truth from falsehood. And I don't think that is I don't think that's what happened here. But it is something that we have to watch out for just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's just, us very honestly doing our jobs, right? We have to mention these things. At the end of the day, it's important for us to cover all of our bases here. So Calvin Parker basically goes on to validate Charles Hickson's story, further into his older age. He's definitely talking about this freely, and good for him for finally getting his story out there. And then of course he passes away in August of 2023. So Calvin is no longer here anymore. They've both since died. And now kind of, this is where the story is. I mean, this is as much information we thought that we were going to get, which is super interesting. And I'm going to brag. I like to brag. When we did the original episode on Pascagoula, it was I just looked it up. It was released in May of 2022. And in real time, as we're recording the episode, I kept saying his name, Calvin Parker. And I thought it looked familiar, because I, was pretty new at what I did. I've only been doing this since 2019. And I go and find out that we're Facebook friends. And I thought that was cool because here's something that people might not know. I don't send Facebook friend requests. Anybody who's there is there because they
Right.
added me. So he added me at some point, and I was like, oh man, I could reach out and talk to him. Unfortunately, I did reach out. He never responded. We never got that chance to speak before he passed. But I just wanted to humble brag. I think Calvin Parker listened to this show. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he very well might have. And I don't want to take anything away from you, but he friended, I think that he had sort of a tendency to reach out to people in this field. Because I was Facebook friends with him, and we interacted a couple of times briefly. I think after I did my write up of the Pascagoula abduction and published that, he had read it and commented on it and everything. But yeah, no, I never got to speak to him more than that. Now, he wrote a book in 2018. And interestingly enough, after that book was published, other people started coming forward. So you think the story is over.
Right.
You think there's nothing else to learn about Pascagoula. Well, that, my friends, simply is not true. Other people came forward 50 years later to corroborate certain details of that event. So this is interesting. Maria and Jerry Blair of Theodore, Alabama, decided that they were going to come forward following the release of Parker's 2018 book, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, to tell of a strange sighting they had that same night. So that night, the Blairs were sitting in their 1969 Pontiac GTO in the parking lot of Graham's Seafood on the opposite side of the river from where Hickson and Parker were fishing. Now, Jerry worked for that seafood company, and the couple were waiting for the captain of a ship to arrive and take Jerry offshore. So the captain was late, and they were waiting in the parking lot for hours until Maria spotted a strange light. And this is what she had to say about it. She said, I was looking at the sky, and I noticed a blue light in the sky over where they were fishing. It started moving, and it seemed like it was following along the Pascagoula River. I just seen the lights on it. It was just going back and forth. Sometimes it would just sit there. It went on for 20 to 25 minutes. Now, Maria initially thought the strange light was a plane, but realized that its movements were too unusual for any terrestrial craft. Jerry, however, did not share her concerns, at least at first. So this is what he said. I thought it was a helicopter initially and just blew it off. It landed about 150 to 200 yards from us. I was just north of the bridge, and it was just south of the bridge. I was there, but stupid me didn't pay much attention to it. I was just going offshore and thinking about other things, which is like the most credible testimony I've ever heard. The guy freely admits that he was more worried about going offshore for his job than seeing this light that he couldn't identify. So I love everything about that. Now, eventually, the two lost sight of this object. The captain arrived to pick Jerry up, and they prepared for his departure. Now, they were carrying his belongings onto the boat, and while doing that, walking down the lighted pier, Maria heard and saw something unusual in the water. This is where it gets a little strange. This is where it gets even stranger and kind of departs from like Hickson and Parker's account, or at least I can't immediately put these things together. So she said that she heard this loud, like thumping splash. And when she looks over the side of the pier, she sees what she at first thought was a person in the river. Like she's looking down at it, and she says it looks like a person, but there was something different about it. And it only came up to the surface. And as soon as she saw it, it went back down, like under the water. So, at first she wasn't sure what it was. And she suspected that, it could have been somebody in diving gear, although that was weird because they never came back up. Jerry didn't see it at all. He just heard the noise. And it was only later after hearing reports of Hickson and Parker's experience, that Maria decided that the descriptions of the aliens in the men's story matched what she had seen in the water. So after hearing their description, she's like, oh, maybe that's what I saw. So personally, I'm willing to separate that part entirely from them seeing the UFO, because I don't know that these things are at all related. But it is part of their story, and it would be weird to cut it out. Now, there was another witness that same night who also came forward following Parker's book. This is Judy Branning. So she, at the time, was on a double date with her roommate when she saw some strange lights in the sky while stopped at a traffic light in a car a few miles away. So she said, and I quote, "We were on a double date that night. We were at a red light at, Chicot, I guess, and Highway 90, and we were basically sitting on the railroad track. I saw some lights, and I wasn't sure what I was looking at because it was so far away." So she said that, similar to the Blairs, she thought the lights might belong to an airplane, but she and her friends quickly realized that wasn't the case, as the unidentified flying object flew overhead. So she noticed that it didn't make any noise, that it had very bright lights, and as it got closer, it was just hovering. She said it was kind of a saucer or disc shape with a rounded top. So the shape very similar to what Hickson and Parker had described. And most interestingly, the radio, while this was happening, the radio in the car started sounding like it was running through all the stations, and then the car went dead. So, wow. So many years after this happened, we've got people willing to come forward and corroborate this experience. I mean, what the Blairs and what this other lady, Ms. Branning, had described in terms of their UFO sighting, I mean, that's what Hickson and Parker described, like the blue craft, like the shape of it. All of it sort of lines up. And as far as I know, these people didn't get anything for their testimony. It was just when the book came out and it started to get popular, or at least, it got some attention, especially by local media. They actually have a plaque up by the river. There's like a little monument that was erected to commemorate the Pascagoula abduction. They even had a little ceremony, and obviously Hickson wasn't alive at that point, but they invited Calvin Parker, and he said that it was really moving, and he really appreciated the city doing that. But anyway, it was around this time when all of this stuff was happening that these people decided to come forward. And as far as I know, they didn't get any further attention for this. They aren't doing the conference circuit. They didn't write books of their own. They're not doing a bunch of TV appearances or anything else. They just became aware of this, let's face it, relatively obscure UFO story, because the most popular stories to us are relatively obscure to everybody else at best. And said, oh shit, I was there and I saw something that corroborates that story. I should tell somebody. And I think that's what's happening here. And it's just marvelous. I just love it so much.
Yeah. No, I and that's information that I didn't know about until we were talking about this show schedule. And you were like, well, what about the Pascagoula updates? And I was like, the what? So that's very cool. I do love that. Just kind of but seeing different people's opinions that are local, about this story and what different people thought. There's some people that claim that their parents, they were a kid and they remember this story happening, and their parents at the time, for one, people became very afraid, obviously. You had the usual backlash that you have with people that claim to have been abducted by aliens, right? Stay away from that guy. But they had people that, definitely rocked their world because they also had some type of maybe not exactly that experience, but they've seen UFOs, right? At minimum. So they were like at the ready to believe it, but quiet about that in fear of being ridiculed by the public.
Oh
And
yeah.
that is just, it's so typical. And while I've never been to Pascagoula, Mississippi to talk to these people, I've been to enough small towns with UFO flaps and happenings and stuff to kind of know, um, that's just one of those secret nuances, right? That's just one of those things that happen where, you have all these people that wanted to believe, but jumped in on the mob mentality of these people are crazy, for fear.
Right.
And they didn't want to come forward because they didn't want to be in that same position.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that too, because Maria at least specifically talked about how she remembered the story coming out and thinking at the time, wow, I saw this weird blue light. I saw the craft they're talking about, and not wanting to come forward.
Yeah.
And thus sitting on the story for 45 years because she didn't want to be ridiculed. So
Yeah.
it's a thing.
So anybody who jumps on this immediately and goes, well, I don't want to believe it and I choose not to believe it, they're going to take some of those updated kind of stories and go, well, of course they came out after the fact. But I mean, there's some credence to the fact as to why. Like, there's a reason why they came out after the fact.
Oh yeah.
But still being credible. It's just the way that works sometimes. But I think it's neat. I think that's really interesting. So, let's kind of get into, theorizing a little bit. I don't think we need to spend too much time on it. Of course, theory one, it was a hoax, right? They completely made it up.
Yeah. Philip J. Klass. That guy was such a pain in the dick. And he thought it was a hoax because of course he did, because Klass thought fucking everything was a hoax because he was a fucking dickbag. So, go fucking figure. So yeah, I don't know. That's all I have to say about that. I don't think it's a hoax.
Right. Coming from the two podcast hosts that sit here and tell you guys most of the time every week that this thing is probably bullshit.
Well, sometimes things are bullshit. I don't know.
A lot of times things are bullshit, unfortunately.
It's true. Too many times.
This is not a hoax. I don't believe. I have no reason to believe that it's a hoax at all.
Correct. There's no evidence for that.
No, there's no evidence that they got together, they planned this, and they made this. They made it all up. Theory number 2 is that while this was happening, what's his name? Hickson. Sorry, I'm blanking. What's that guy's name? We talked about it a little bit.
I don't know.
Charles Hickson was having a delusion of sorts, right? He was hallucinating this whole situation
People
happening.
said like hypnagogic hallucination.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
like he was falling asleep or something.
Yeah. Right. It's like a dream, but you're awake. It's akin to like sleep paralysis. And
yes, they are very closely related.
Very closely related. And they are fishing, and it is late at night and, whatever. But they're saying that, he kind of had this delusion that this is all happening. But then, of course, well, what about Calvin Parker? Well, Calvin Parker went to the police station and said that he was asleep. He said he wasn't awake during what happened. However, Calvin did hear the sound, saw the craft, caught a glimpse of the beings, and then lost consciousness. You know what I mean? So he didn't also.
Right.
But some people think that maybe Hickson kind of fed that into Calvin's brain a little bit. Him being young, he's impressionable, kind of made him believe that he saw those things, but he didn't actually see those things.
Maybe. I mean, he was 19. He wasn't a fucking toddler.
Right. He wasn't a baby. And let me remind you again, you can go and listen to the police interrogation audio. Again, Calvin seems to need more comfort than Hickson does. Even though Hickson shook up, that boy saw something. Whatever that was.
Like, I have also read a decent amount about that particular hypothesis, and on the surface, okay, it's better than the hoax hypothesis because at least they're not trying to ruin the credibility of these men,
Yeah.
through their hypothesis, like somebody like fucking Class would. But it's still, it relies on a lot of assumptions, like you have to, first of all, you have to assume that Hickson was falling asleep. You have to assume that Parker was so suggestible that Hickson could convince him of the reality of his hypnagogic hallucination. And at a certain point, it kind of unravels because it's just assumption on top of assumption on top of assumption. And at what point do you go, or what they told you, what they told you that happened is what fucking happened.
Right.
At a certain point, you just got to go, okay, yeah, all of these other assumptions, maybe, or why don't we just listen to them and assume as though they are authentically representing this experience and not just total morons who can't recognize a hypnagogic hallucination. Because let me tell you about those kinds of hallucinations. They don't last that long. This is the kind of thing where somebody having this kind of waking dream state where where the hallucination would include seeing a craft, having beings come out of the craft, take them aboard the craft, examine them in the craft. That is beyond the pale in terms of hallucination length and detail. That would be a hallucination you would want to teach in fucking medical school.
I mean, that's almost as unrealistic. I mean, it's almost, as them being abducted by aliens, because it just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, it's just such a stretch. So no, yeah, it's better than the hoax hypothesis, because at least you're not attacking the ethical credibility of these two men, but it still just doesn't prove fucking anything. There's no evidence for it. So.
It doesn't check the boxes. There's still many questions beyond that. And of course, the third theory, and I'm sure there's other theories out there. There probably are. But the one I'm going to, the final one I'm going to say is that, that shit fucking happened. It was for real.
Right.
I mean, what are you going to say? And, even if, and I said it earlier, even if Calvin Parker's updated story, which I don't believe is fake, even if it is, it's it still doesn't discount the original beings in the craft and, the real actual fucking aliens that actually fucking abducted them. So
right.
At minimum, and again, I don't think that, I think that was credible. And who knows, you guys? Maybe I have a confirmation bias here. Of course I do. I want it to be real. But I don't have any reason to suspect that it's not. There's no red flags for me on this. This is all green flags.
True.
There's not one that I can think of that makes me even begin to question it. Everything has a reasonable explanation, when it comes to skepticism. When you go, oh, well, he made that up because he didn't come out till after. The people made that story up because it didn't. But again, that shit happens all the time. Just with normal human behavior. It's not weird. It's not unusual. That's normal. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if Hickson continued to have contact with aliens after that. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he exaggerated. I don't know. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the very first original story, at minimum, I think that shit happened.
Yeah. I believe that something happened to those men. I think that something that they can't explain happened to them. And furthermore, I think something happened to them that we can't easily explain.
No.
It's not just that they can't explain it. It's that Neither can we. Neither has anybody else been able to, at least not to a completely like satisfactory degree since it happened. And that's what makes it important.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely it's a classic. It's a classic story. It never gets old. It's a good one. Like I said, we don't get abductees like this anymore. What happens? You know? They collected all the boogers that they needed and they went on about their life. Because that's what they did to them,
Maybe.
right?
Well,
They
you know
collected
what?
those boogers.
I think, isn't that the point? I don't know. I hope so. I mean, I've been wiping them all over the house to like distract the aliens so they can't get me. Is that bad? Am I not supposed to do that?
I mean, we do call it digging for treasure. You know what I mean? So, like,
Right.
maybe, like, we kind of know, like, subconsciously.
Gross. So gross. I don't even remember what I was going to say now. I'm too distracted by being gross.
That's probably the most immature joke that's ever been on the show.
Probably.
There's been a lot of them,
and that's saying something. That's really fucking saying something.
but that was very juvenile.
Yeah. It's true.
No, it's a good one. You know, I like it. I keep saying that. I'll keep saying it forever until the day I die.
I remember.
Oh,
I
go ahead.
remember what I was going to say. I was just going to say, people don't call the police anymore. People don't go to the police with their paranormal anything, really, for the most part. I've talked to abductees who have had experiences within the past, several years. It never even occurs to them to get the authorities involved, like
Right.
never. So I think there's been this sort of cultural shift, and that's probably why you see less of it. Well, at least less or fewer. That's why you see fewer experiences like the Pascagoula abduction, is because people just don't follow that fucking framework anymore. It's not something happened to me, I got to go call the police or get the police involved or whatever. Nobody has that kind of fucking trust in policing anymore.
Yeah.
They don't think there's any point. And they're not wrong, because what are the police going to do for you? Nothing against the police. I'm just saying they are not prepared to help you in this situation. So.
Right, what the fuck are they gonna do?
Nothing.
Arrest?
Same thing as anybody. Yeah.
They can't do anything
Exactly.
about it. Well, and just, I mean, let's be honest, we're a lot more overwhelmed, honestly, with people's stories, and that's not really a bad thing. We want you guys to keep talking about the things that you've experienced, always. If you're ever questioning whether or not you should tell your story, you should tell your story. This is your sign.
Do it.
But with the invention of the internet, I mean, you can go anywhere, any forum, where people are talking, and you can find story after story after story after story. Whether or not all the stories are true, who knows, right? They would require further investigation. But I think that they probably are. I think by volume, there's definitely a lot more of these types of stories. And so, back then you didn't have people that were willing to come forward about it. You didn't have something like the internet where you could tell your story while also remaining completely anonymous. If you came out with this shit, you're on the news and everybody knows your name.
True.
And everybody knows that you got probed in the butthole,
Everybody.
And you don't necessarily want people to know that.
Yeah, fair point.
So when people came out and they did talk about this stuff, it was unusual to talk about it, and it's not so unusual to talk about it anymore. But that also means, again, a greater portion of anonymity going on, because you can. Less people to investigate, because those stories never really blow up. So you can't investigate what you don't know about, right? I can't investigate your situation unless you tell me about your situation. I'm not a psychic. I'm an investigator. They're not the same. So anyway, and then the media coverage just really isn't there. It's not new. It's not that fun anymore. Sometimes, every once in a great while, you'll get a publication pushing out a story, but now that they have AI algorithms and stuff like that, usually like abductees and whatever, pick your term, aliens, cryptids aren't at the top of trending. It's something else.
Right.
But I'm sure they do exist. I was going to ask, what the fuck do you make of the aliens themselves? I mean, we kind of talked about it, but can you think of anything similar compared to these guys?
No, but you got to remember too, like this is the era of weird one-off alien sightings and bizarre creature reports. I mean, once the 80s came around and communion got big, we started seeing fewer and fewer reports like this, and it was just more and more alien grays. And then in the 90s, right, well, whatever, like in the 80s into the 90s, started to branch out more, and you would get like other sort of species mixed in with the grays, like your mantis cucks and reptilians and such, but not the kind of variety that you used to see in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I don't know. Like I don't think there's any classification that you can make. Like this is a distinct, species that we have seen again, or even will see again. Like we just gotta sit in the fucking mystery of shit like this because it happens all the time. You already mentioned the Flatwoods monster,
right?
The Kelly Hopkinsville goblins.
Yeah.
There's all of these weird. I mean, there's just so fucking we could sit here and just name weird one-off fucking encounters like that, like all night, right? Because there was like 3 decades where they happened fairly frequently. Like you could put shit. Never mind. I was going to say you could put like Mothman in that, but now we have a ton of Mothman sightings in other areas. So I'm going to do a total 180 on this. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll start getting more Pascagoula alien reports from other places. Because we have at least one instance of what we would have assumed was a relatively isolated sighting, a flap, where, it ended up exploding and being part of seemingly a much, much larger phenomenon that people are witnessing all over the entire world. But yeah, I don't know. Like there are so many of these weird one-off cases. Can they all be distinct species? Like, is that possible? Is it like, did they just come to this planet once, abduct these 2 guys and then just fuck off and never come back? I have no idea. Are they ultra terrestrials? Is it that their appearance is reflective in some way of the subconscious of the witnesses? I mean, I don't know. Like, just pick your poison here. Like, you could come up with any explanation you want, and it's just as valid as any other, because we just have no idea.
One of my so not the Pascagoula aliens. When you think of the Pascagoula aliens, what you think about obviously is what both of them saw coming out of the ship. But Calvin Parker saw something different. And if we go based off of his accounts, this did happen to hundreds of other people, at some point. And they're probably, who knows if they're alive now or not, or, whatever. But when he talks about this alien gray woman with her spiky probe finger, it does remind me, there's another very similar incident to this. One of my favorite stories ever, the Vegetable Man of West Virginia. And I know people hear that and they go, oh my God, the Vegetable Man, really so ridiculous. But it's another one. There's just absolutely no reason to believe this story. And I say this a lot. This is one of those stories that it's so fucking bizarre and it's so fucking out there that there's no way this guy made this up. Like, this totally happened just because of how crazy it is. But in that, a man encounters an alien creature in the woods, and what it does is, it tells him, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. Reaches out to him, basically hypnotizes the man, reaches out to him with his hands. The creature's hand has got these spikes all over it, and he jabs those spikes into the man and starts sucking his blood through his fingers.
Ugh.
And I mean, that's crazy. That sounds like horror movie
is.
stuff. But because it's so crazy, I don't remember the fucking guy's name that it happened to. You know what I mean? I just remember the vegetable man itself. Like, he didn't go out there to make a fucking buck off of the story, and I can't help but to just believe in that wholeheartedly with my whole being. But it reminds me of that, so I don't know, maybe that's just a feature that they have. And these are all, even though they don't really, because he was just like a green leafy creature. Maybe they don't correlate at all. Maybe the possibilities are endless as far as what these things could look like. You're right. Maybe we'll start to get Pascagoula alien creatures again. We don't know. But I like that. I think it's fun to talk about, speculate on the different species and, kind of what they're doing, what their deal is.
Sure. You never know. I mean, are they distinct species? Are they merely facets of, like, different facets of the same phenomenon? I have no idea, but it is fun to talk about, which is why we're here.
Anything else you want to say about the Pascagoula alien abduction?
Oh boy, is there anything else I want to say? I think that, okay, if there's something that I wish people would take away from this, it's that these experiences happen to human beings, right? And the responses that these people have that these people have to the experiences are also very human. And so these stories can be messy, and you have to be willing to examine them not as a passive observer or some intellectual robot, but as a human being. And I think this is one really specifically where if you can do that, and you can look at it with all of the myriad and complicated facets of humanity that comprise each and every one of us, then it's a really fascinating story. It's a really, really powerful, interesting experience. And I hope that people take that to heart and don't just apply it to this case, but apply it to every case, to every case that you come across. I'm not telling you to throw out your objectivity or just, credulously believe everything you see, but just understand, there's a level of understanding, I think, where you realize that these are human beings having a human experience. And so when you hear about things or events within this larger experience, they can make sense in more than one way. It doesn't always have to be, oh, well, this story changed a little bit, it's all bullshit. Sometimes it can be, well, people who are traumatized don't always just want to come out and talk about their experiences right away to people they don't know. And that's the kind of distinction I think you can only make if you are approaching this, again, at a human level. So just try to be a decent human, everybody. That's all.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, like we kind of said earlier, of course, it was more of a joking way, but let's be real. Like, how many people are going to come forward and be like, yes, I was taken on an alien spaceship and they put something in my butthole. Like, that's traumatizing.
Right.
Really, like, for real. People aren't generally going to go around telling people that at the risk of having this very traumatizing event being scoffed at or laughed at, human nature. That's how it works. No, I agree, and I'm glad we got to cover a story that, we both really enjoy, really find some credibility in. I think people kind of needed that bit of fresh air. Again, you guys, just to remind you, we do this because we are experiencers, because we do believe weird things happen that need an explanation. We don't do this just to shit all over your favorite legend. I promise.
No. You want to know why I get so, the reason I get so mad is because I know that shit happens to people, to real people like me and itsasherz and the dozens and dozens of other people that I have interviewed and tried to help. over like the past, God, going on, I don't know, 15, somewhere between 15 and 20 years. Don't make me do math. But like, that's why I get so fucking mad. That's why I'm so passionate about this. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I think it's all bullshit. It's because I think it's not. And because of that, we have to take it more seriously and treat it with more respect than this field currently is. And part of that, is exposing things that I think probably aren't true. But the other part of that is taking things very seriously that I think probably are.
Yeah.
And that's where we landed today in this episode.
Right, because when we tell you guys, hey, you should stop and really consider the Pascagoula abduction, we want you to take us seriously. Because if we're saying it, then you know there's got to be something to it, because we know everything, obviously.
Okay.
We don't. Again, take our opinions, period, with a grain of salt. If you guys want to believe in something, I don't care, as long as you listen to the show and you have a good time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
It's up to you.
You're not hurting anybody. Yeah.
Right. That's it's whatever. Well, anyway, I think we've said everything that can be said for this episode. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know if you've had an encounter with a Pascagoula alien. That'd be really cool.
It's true. And if you really want to support what we're doing, you should head over to our Patreon. Patreon.com/Wednesdays Talk.
Wednesdays Talk. That those Falkville pictures are in there somewhere. I posted them a long time ago. So if you want to pay to look at them instead of Google them for free, and you should want to pay to look at them instead. It makes it feel dirty. You know what I mean? Paying to look at pictures. Patreon.com/Wednesdays Talk. So that's the place to be. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys back here next Wednesday.